Thank you for being here, and thank you to GFH Financial Group for hosting this panel. My name's Jack Dutton. I'm the Chief Business Correspondent at Our Monitor. We're a news organisation that covers the Middle East and North Africa. And I'm delighted to present this panel with some esteemed panellists on funding the next phase of education. Education is often described as a safe or a defensive investment, but that doesn't mean it's a simple one. If you try scaling K-12 education across borders, I think the panelists would agree that's a case in point. In the MENA region, that complexity is magnified. You have some of the world's youngest populations. According to the WEF, more than half of the population of the MENA region is 25 and under. But economically, it's also a tale of two cities. You have some of the wealthiest countries in the world and some of the poorest. Some governments, like those in the Gulf, for example, have ambitious, placing education at the center of ambitious national transformation agendas. And many families have quite a strong willingness to pay more and have high expectations. And now you're seeing a rapid push of introducing AI into lessons and into the classes and hybrid learning models. And then you have countries which are way behind them in terms of educational development and technology adoption. Some are even at war or recovering from conflict with damaged infrastructure and telecoms. There may even be parts of the region as well, we'll talk about in more detail, without sufficient internet connectivity, which adds to the challenge. At the same time, the fundamentals are under pressure. Qualified teachers are scarce and getting more expensive, and infrastructure remains capital intensive. The regulatory and cultural expectations differ from one market to the next. And unlike many sectors, failure in education doesn't just have financial consequences. So the question is no longer whether K-12 education is a compelling investment opportunity in the Middle East and North Africa. Clearly it is. The real question is whether we can deliver scale, quality, sustainability, equity, and trust, all at the same time. And today we'll talk honestly about what works on the ground, what investors still misunderstand, and how technology, policy, and culture are reshaping the future of education. I wanted to quickly ask a question of the audience. Is capital in MENA K-12 education better spent on transformation or stabilization? By transformation, I mean backing bold tech-enabled models that may be disruptive to existing systems. And by stabilization, I mean strengthening traditional schools, which there's already a lot of trust. So I introduced our esteemed panel. So to my left, we have Jay Kimmelman, who's the CEO and founder of New Globe Education. And after that, we have Fatima Kamal, Managing Director, Educational Developments, GFH Financial Group. And to her left, we have Andrew Baird, CEO of Education for Employment. And then we have, last but no means least, Mohammed Rajab, board member, Future Tech 4.0, CMO, ADI Foundation. And to introduce the panelists and the work they do, I thought I'd start with a question. So the education sector is the main feeder of the job market of tomorrow. How do you see the future of the job market in the MENA region, and what role is your organization playing in that? Jay, if you wanted to start.
Sure. I think the challenge of the job market in the region is not just about job creation, but also about job readiness at scale, right? There's employers are constantly complaining about the lack of the educational skills, basic reading comprehension, critical thinking skills, 21st century that's coming in. And so, the region has one of the sort of largest gaps between education quality and GDP per capita in the world. And so you have to start at the foundational level. And so our work at New Globe is sort of upstream from that, right? Is being contracted by governments to say, how do you fix the foundational learning problems so that they don't propagate throughout the system? And so I think in addition to sort of the more traditional sort of job creation and skills matching, I think there's this skills readiness that starts at the foundational level.
Yeah, what about yourself, Fatima?
Yes, so when it's come to education importance and job creation and I would say employability level, as Jay mentioned, making sure that the education system outcome, it's really addressing the market gap. As of today, we can see from our investment, and when we are screening even schools to be acquired, what matters for us is not really the number of graduates or the number of students that school would have. It's really how they are impacting the quality of a graduate, where these graduates end up with, which universities, what is the employability rate per this school. And one of the things we've realized in GFH being in the investment sector for at least the past 2 decades is that there are no clear indication and benchmark when it's come to who's producing what to the market. Everyone talk about numbers, about growth in numbers, but where is the misalignment is coming, it's yet not clear. The other thing that I would also like to point out here is that the speed at which the market and the job market is transforming and changing is much more faster than how education system can react to these change. And that's why you would see that there would be a lots of, if I can put it in a nice word, trial and error when it's come with education system, move purely to tech-based, have a hybrid, stay with the classical education system till a certain age. And this is, I think, one of the key area which is creating lots of uncertainty and mismatch when it's come to education and graduate and the actual work demand there.
And what about yourself, Andrew?
Great. Well, first, just thanks to GFH for hosting this and bringing this this conversation. I think is such an important one. Education for employment. We work in 11 markets in the MENA region, and really the role that we're playing right now is working with youth who are unemployed, unsuccessfully trying to find jobs. And so we connect them to employers by providing the skills, many of the skills that Jay was mentioning, kind of those workplace ready skills, the creative thinking, the leadership skills, those that are actually most often cited as missing by employers. So we do this at some scale. And while we're doing that, we're trying to work very closely with schools, school systems, to reform curricula in a way that is connected to the labor market. So we have about 3,000 employer partners in the region. And so we work very closely to try to bring that experience to bear at the educational institutions, whether it's secondary or higher education. So.
Incredible. I want to add on to that point as well. So this is the same model we're actually taking. For us, education for employment was a core reason on launching this initiative, to be honest. We've seen AI go into a massive space into education system and at a very fast pace, where in a lot of those schools or education systems, you'd see either the school under so much pressure to start implementing AI without knowing what the impact on the students is. And at the same time, students at home were consuming AI to start delivering some of those educational projects and school projects, also without knowing what the impact was. It came to us to a point where you have tons of AI applications. Today all of us can build an app in few prompts, but then you need the actual technical background and the real knowledge to actually implement it and make it viable for people to use it. That's the gap we found in our market mainly. And we started an initiative to really start educating people with future technology.
Yeah, and on the subject of using AI in education, Mohammed, you were seeing more personalized learning, AI-driven personalized learning becoming more popular. And what would you say are the benefits and risks of early exposure seen in many parts of the region to these tools? And what would you say is the right age for exposure?
Very good question. Look, I'm a father of 2 myself, and luckily I have them in different age range. Luckily and unluckily. So I have a 12-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I've seen both grow very well into a proper school in Dubai, where we come from. And frankly speaking, I am personally against introducing AI at a very young age. I've seen it myself. I mean, all of us in this room, you can remember when you were curious about some point, you would go research, you'd go study, you'd go ask around, you'd go to someone elderly to ask him, how does this work? Or you'd go into a book. Today, it became all available in seconds. And it's killing curiosity, creativity, and it's becoming a very easy access to a lot of tools and information. For me, you're happy on one side that you see your child is growing very quickly and understanding and getting a lot of knowledge in no time. But at the same time, it's the effort that is lacking, the creativity, the fact that you're missing out on, you know what, I've put effort into learning this and I had it. So I'm against introducing it before university, if you want my honest, true opinion. Where I see it most valuable in education, frankly speaking, is on the teacher's side of the business. That's where you can go, customize your own curriculum. There are tons of, we've seen tools that can help you in actually correcting exams, creating tests on any specific skills, organizing your schedules, etc. But not for students, to be frank.
So before university, it'd be great to get your opinion on this, Fatima.
Yeah, so I really agree with Mohammed. AI is becoming a very, I would say, yet useful tool, but it's also becoming a tool that students tend to over-rely on, and the skills, creativity also impacts the source of which they are getting this information. Because today, in the past, when we used to search through books and through research, we had a reliable source. We know that the source of information is well validated and verified. Today, the kids at school really can be impacted, if anything. They could believe that this is the truth, while this is not the right thing. It's also create that sort of reliance on already available things without putting the right effort. At the same time, and this is, I think, yet to be really proven by data and statistics, students at younger age, they really need to embrace and really gain fundamentals of educations and understanding how to deploy, utilize knowledge rather than having things ready without they even understand how this was reached to. One other aspect also is that Mohammed mentioned, and I would really agree, is how the AI today can really be used to reduce, I would say, the supply gap when it's come to teaching, teacher professions. Today, we find that qualified teachers becoming a big issue globally based on the UNESCO's latest report. There would be around 44 million teacher shortage globally by 2030. Definitely, this can't be bridged over the coming 4 years by creating more qualified teacher. But this is how AI can be used, I would say, as an enabler rather than a replacement of improving teaching profession efficiency and quality. And a majority also of this gap is at the secondary school, where more subject-based qualified teachers are required. I think it's the same report mentioned, around 31 million of the teacher supply over the coming 4 years would lie into the secondary schooling system. The last point I would like also to bring here when it's come to the AI deployment, while we now, as a panel or a discussion point, we are talking about enabling and AI deployment at school or even using it as an enabler to the teacher, we also need to remember that there are still lots of nations, lots of countries, lots of schools that they cannot afford these sorts of expensive tools. So then this is also could create, I would say, other problems ending to a wider range in education inequality between different, even within the same country, to be honest, between different system graduates.
Yeah, interesting points. And we can talk more about the gap in the market between those who have steady internet supply and those who don't, and living in rural regions, the urban environments, etc. But first, I would like to kind of get the other view of from yourself, Andrew, because you're dealing with a lot of young people who are looking for work. And what are the kind of risks and dangers, I guess, if young people are not adopting AI or understanding how to use AI effectively? When, like, what do employers look for when in the region when they're looking for young people and their capabilities with AI? And do you think there's a case to be made for earlier start?
Yeah. So I'll offer probably a bit of a dissenting view here. I think I agree with many of the potential dangers and challenges. I also think that the investment in teachers is really critical, and that's one of the biggest underinvestments. We often invest in the infrastructure and forget about the teachers. The teachers are not just vehicles to deliver. That said, if anybody has one of these at 14 years old or 15 years old, they're using AI. And a lot of youth have them a lot earlier than that. And so I think the degree to which it's adopted as part of the curricula can be debated, but I do think that it's critically important that they learn an understanding of ethical use, of this is an opportunity for talking about both creativity, but also understanding the nuance between what information is valid and what isn't, and critical thinking skills. And so I think you can almost not start that early enough. That can be introduced very, very early, I believe. Directly to your point, I think we're at an interesting position where employers know they want AI skills, they just don't necessarily always know why and what to do with it, because they're still figuring it out. But we are certainly hearing the demand that they want AI-enabled workers to come in, and often those folks come in and at a entry level, and they're transformative to the business that they're entering. I was in a panel yesterday and someone said, we are seeing the death of the career ladder. And we can debate that a little bit, but the point that they were making is that people are coming in with such critical skills at an entry level that they're able to make significant impacts in their business. And it's not taking a 15-year career ladder to get to that point where they can make those. It's an interesting thing. So I do think probably earlier than university, also because the terminal point for most youth going through school is prior to university level. And so some exposure, I think, has to happen.
And would that be kind of the basics in terms of being very adept with LLMs, or what sort of basics?
Well, I think as a basic, exposure, everyone has to get that exposure to understand what it is and how to use it. I think when you look at how we dealt with, say, coding, which, we're now kind of seeing the death of coding classes, but that was started relatively early, right? People were beginning that at 12, 13, 14, even earlier, in some cases, right? So I think you're going to have some people who are probably going to engage at that level in AI early, and why not? The other thing I will say is probably from a competitive point of view, you certainly don't want to retard the growth of AI in a particular place. And I think countries that really embrace it probably going to have a competitive advantage.
Yeah. And coming to you now, Jay, it would be good to kind of speak to you a little bit about how you're deploying edtech programs at scale, and particularly in underserved regions with limited digital infrastructure.
Sure. Yeah, so New Globe, we deploy one of the largest AI-enabled education delivery systems in the world at public system scale. So where governments ask us to do this for entire public school systems. So millions of students, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of teachers. it goes to the prior point, which is AI isn't just about going direct to the students. It's about how can you leverage AI both to support the teacher, as we discussed, but also at the system level, right? When you're talking about managing tens of thousands of schools, how do you first collect and manage all that data to actually drive individualized decisions at a classroom or a school or at a regional level? You need AI in order to do that well. What we provide is a holistic system transformation or a full stack solution. So it's not just the digital devices so that teachers can access digital lesson plans, but it's digitizing a national assessment system so that governments can know exactly where all their students are and closing that feedback loop. So the information from the assessment system changes the trajectory of learning for each individual classroom. So how do you have personalized or adaptive learning at scale that's still standardized at a state or a national level? And to the point around the teacher, how do you support the teacher with individualized, personalized coaching that's based upon their delivery in the classroom and what their students need? And how do you do that? Well, providing digital transparency to a Ministry of Education who needs to have essentially the equivalent of a NASA control room around what's happening across their entire country. So how do you combine that sort of personalization and adaptation with standardization? So that's what we provide. But to the second part of your question, how do you do that in a highly variable infrastructure environment? So we work in a lot of places where in rural areas, they may not have any connectivity. Electricity may be very fraught. We work where schools during flooding seasons are not even accessible. So how do you develop a technology platform from the ground up that takes into account those realities? Things like devices that last for 2 weeks on a single charge, a system architecture that has multiple levels of caching. How do you, if you're dealing with real-time data at a central or ministerial or government level, how do you take data that's coming at different recency points, given that you have some schools that are offline and online? And so all those pieces have to come together. But if you're dealing with the public sector, you can't just address the problem or the challenges in the megacity. You have to look across the whole board in order to have that equitable delivery. And so that's what we do with governments.
Sure. Does anyone else wanting to weigh in on that one? Or?
Very inspiring, to be honest. One of the challenges we were facing is how do we reach people without access to technology? And not only from an education perspective, but across the board, and even from a financial perspective. We look heavily at the people who don't have access to banks and still use paper currencies. Would love to really connect later on and see how can we embed both technologies and show you what blockchain infrastructure can support those. Because for us, we have a mission to bring 1 billion people onto our chain. It sounds a bit too much, probably, but because we're part of a much larger ecosystem, we do have the numbers, we do have the figures across and existing projects across multiple countries that we can slowly bring on chain. One of our ecosystem companies called ECSoft is already launched a school in an extremely rural part of India, and I've missed the name of the city. I was trying to remember it while you're talking. But it's all around energy transition and energy saving and being sustainable. An incredible opportunity. And they've graduated 3 batches already. So a lot to talk on that front afterwards.
Mohammed, yes, you touched on it, I believe, the Future Tech 4 initiative to train the 10,000 Emirati nationals in Web3 and blockchain. It'd be good to learn a bit more about that and what implementation challenges have you faced and how you kind of building a sustainable pipeline of talent.
100%. Honestly, this is where we tap on a lot. So I'll tell you a quick story, to be honest. When we first launched a blockchain infrastructure that is institutional and is not based on speculation and more toward real world assets, we were struggling within our region to find existing talents that have those skills. Web3 was an industry that's very much related to crypto. And for us, mindset of people was the hardest thing to change. People to accept that there is an infrastructure, a blockchain that today is more regulated. You're saying traditional and non-traditional finance really bridge an incredible gap. So we had to change that mindset a lot to start training people on those skills so we can bring them onto our team and other companies' teams as well, so that we can actually deploy our technology. So we started with Future Tech with that mission of starting with a batch of 10,000 graduates with Web3 and AI skills, so that they can be job prepared. Because none within the UAE, we've looked at maybe 6 or 7 CVs literally that were rotating across every single industry. And our region was becoming a headquarter for the largest Web3 entities. You have Binance, you have Circle, Crypto.com. The largest Web3 entities came and set up head offices in there, but they're only migrating talents from their own countries, and no one is benefiting from this locally. So we're like, how can we train people, especially Emiratis or residents in the UAE, to be ready not only for our market as an example, but to also deploy them in other places where that is needed as well. The mindset for us was a challenge, because blockchain was always looked at as a crypto, and you're a crypto guy. Why are you in a suit? I'm like, man, different. There's this, we do that. So, but we're getting there. I think we finished the first 6 student. We just launched in December, to be honest. We did the first course. And we're bringing, and we'll tap into that later, but we're doing a lot basically on bringing that education curriculum completely on a blockchain infrastructure that is accessible to other universities and institutions.
Yeah, and how do you see blockchain integrating into the education investment landscape? And what kind of transformative use cases are you seeing?
Investment and education. I'll give you on the investment side of the business. So recently we've launched, or very soon we will launch a regulated dirham-backed stablecoin. So this is following on an incredible trend that has been seeing a lot of adoptions globally recently, with people going after secured transactions where crypto is still volatile. No one understands how it goes up or down. So we've came up with a technology in-house where we know what we can really reflect this and bring a dirham-backed stablecoin, a digital currency that is always equal to the dirham, very secured against the fiat, easily on-ramped and off-ramped across multiple exchanges. The difference is ours is central bank regulated. Anyone in this room, we can do a meeting, we can create our own stablecoin in any currency globally and list it on any exchange. But ours comes through a lot of regulation from central bank, and it will open a lot of investment opportunities for people with wallets who aren't able to approach retail because they cannot secure or lock in a specific price on your cryptocurrency. So that is one side of it. On the education sort of business, we've seen a lot of digital records. So today you travel, let's say you graduate from the American University in Dubai, and you go find a job in Jordan, where I come from. You have to actually bring your physical transcript from AUD and update it with a stamp and go to Jordan and submit it. Where today on a blockchain, you'll have the your entire career journey, records, course by course, class by class, all available under one platform. So we're seeing that under digital records as well. And we're seeing cross-learning globally. So now we're uploading our courses online on a specific blockchain, and we're issuing what we call non-fungible tokens that are educated or that are dedicated to that specific course, and you own that for life. So up on your interview with any Web3 institution, you go and you share your wallet and you tell them, look, I've done this, 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 and that. So it's moving very fast across both. And the best part is we're seeing institutions and governments adopting that a lot. 5 years later, we wouldn't even be able to secure a meeting with any ministry because you're a blockchain crypto guy. Today, you're seeing that, you know what, the market is really streamlining. People are a bit more confident towards it, and we're making the best out of it, to be honest.
In which countries are you seeing the leadership in that regard? Is that in the UAE or further across the Gulf? Or?
Mainly in the UAE. We've been struggling a bit across other GCC countries. But in the UAE, the adoption has been scaling at an immense level. On the stablecoin topic, for example, we are one of 5. You're seeing the largest banks, the largest reserves come out with their own initiatives as well on that dirham-backed stablecoin, because we run on ecosystem. So we have our own companies within our group that I know for a fact we can start deploying those transactions through our largest real estate developer in Abu Dhabi. And the same will happen in Dubai. So you have the Emaars and the largest group holding that will implement that across their ecosystem. So they're moving very fast with this, and it's coming to a point where you as an entity, you'll either have to keep up or you're out of that game. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, Fatima, I want to kind of zoom out a little bit from your perspective as a major investor in the sector. And when you speak to new investors educating in this region, education sector, private equity investors or new players with little or no track record in the region, how do you kind of educate them, excuse the pardon, how to invest responsibly in the sector?
Okay, so when it comes to the education landscape and the MENA in general and GCC in particular, I think we all agree that there is no doubt that there is a huge demand there. The demand is almost guaranteed, young population, high growth. But it's for the international investor, I would say, and regional investor to understand how they best can penetrate into the region and end up with a successful investment that is well developed around a key matrix, if you may allow me. So the challenge that even we as a local, I would say, regional investor finds, despite the demand being there, it's becoming a little bit, I would say, challenging or hard to anticipate sustainable, I would say, financial outcome due to certain constraint that is common, I would say, among at least the GCC countries and beyond. To be able today to make a good investment while offering quality education, while able to source teachers, identify assets at the right price, and at the same time making sure that parents are satisfied with affordable income. It's becoming a sort of not an impossible equation or to solve, but requires a lot of in-depth understanding of the country beyond just looking at the student growth and number growth. The other thing, which I think it's becoming also evident and obvious to us, is that there is, if I would also phrase it properly, that there might be a culture disconnect when international investors would like to deploy or to invest in the region. And so understanding the culture, having the right regional and local partner would fast track in their ability to have a better return on their investments. At the same time, making sure also that they understand the fact that education sector, it's not a short-term investment with a high yield and gain. No, it's a sector with, like, I would say, careful parameters, investment horizon of 5 to 7 years with a clear equity story for an exit, and ability also to grow with while maintaining the right level of return to on the investment it's made.
Yeah, and how should investors balance capital allocation between technology-enabled platforms and traditional brick-and-mortar school infrastructure, particularly in markets where there's uneven digital revenue?
So again, knowing that all my colleagues are supportive of AI and digitization, my humble view again is that 70-30 or like 65-35 allocation between classic mortar and brick and tech-based education will be required at least for the coming couple of years. It's very hard today to justify an immediate, I would say, investment from our point of view, at least when it's come to an investment to a platform which is only, I would say, online-based schooling system. It would not sustain in this part of the world, and even in the wider MENA region. You would need to create that well balance and the investments and the platform. It's even within the school itself. technology, AI, tech have an important, I would say, equal importance of really developing a better curriculum and improving your teacher outcome, but it also needs to be well balanced. And we avoid, I would say, the trap of moving toward a huge immediate investment and online schooling while the foundation itself, it's not yet ready. And we've already spoke about this. It's about teaching, learning, even parents. We need first to make sure they are well educated and well aware how the market is reshaping.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Ali, you said there's no benchmark in terms of, I guess you're referring to in terms of like how things should be standardized within the sector. But I'd be interested to hear when you're speaking to investors, what outcome-based metrics do truly matter and are the most important to you?
Again, if I would talk purely from a business point of view, it's definitely the return on investment. This will matter with us or with any investor who is investing in the sector, but the message I was trying to deliver is that to achieve that expected return, it can't happen in isolation from ensuring quality outcome at the right price and while making sure also you're equipped with the right resources. So I think it's the balance between financial sustainability and the quality outcome. This is where we can deliver the right return on the investment in the sector.
Yeah, and we've obviously there's a global shortage of qualified teachers, and that's one of the biggest constraints in K-12 expansion. And teacher costs in markets like the UAE and Saudi Arabia can exceed 55 to 60% of operating expenses with a very high turnover among international staff. And we've seen obviously a huge demand for international schools. What strategies have genuinely controlled costs without damaging the quality, and which ones have failed?
Yeah, so again, teacher quality or teacher shortage is not a problem only associated with GCC or MENA. It's a global issue. But some countries faces, I would say, a harder pressure compared to other. Like we are still can say that while some GCC country achieve certain level of local well-trained teacher, yet others are still depending on importing qualified teacher, and like in the other AI tech sectors from other countries. So cost is a key matter. If we will be targeting qualified teachers, we have to pay more, and in some cases even the percentage is beyond the 65 or even 70% and from total operating cost. What might go really well is that we need to create good systems where we can improve the outcome of local systems. The countries need to really work on proper education system, institutions, which will really make sure that you have output from the local workforce, which again supported by the imported regional and global teachers. Retaining qualified teacher, I found that it's more economically viable than trying to identify replacement. Replacement would come at a higher cost than to make sure that they meet your quality is not something easy, and it is time consuming. The last point, I would say, also creating the right balance between teaching classical way and technology deployment. If today I would say as a school we will be able, or even as an investor, we will be able to bridge the whole shortfall by recruiting more people, we can't do this. So on some curriculum, on some subject, on some aspects of education, technology and AI will need to take over. I would say not major, but at least 20 to 30% of the administrative role of the teachers. Then the teachers could have a better time to look at the key aspects. They will not be living under that pressure to deal with so many things, and they will end up quitting the education professions and looking to other professions, which is with lower daily pressures and higher paid aspects. And promoting more the importance of teaching as a profession. Yani, today, I usually, and this is what I say to myself and my colleagues and even my kids, and I'm sure all the audience, how many people that would be interviewed of a high school graduate being a student and they would say, we want to be a teacher. Almost no one would be trying to take teachers as a profession due to payment, the pressure, other aspects. So encouraging more people to really be part of the education system while offering the right incentive. This is also could support in shortening this gap globally.
Yeah. And Jay, how have you addressed this challenge at New Globe?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the fact that teachers are a large percentage of the cost of running a school isn't an inherent flaw. It's about how do we super enable those assets, those teachers, to be successful in delivering the outcomes that we're talking about. You know, for us, you know, using technology and AI, it's like giving teachers, you know, in the movie Star Trek, there's the tricorder, which, you know, is that magical device that super enables the doctor. You know, how do you give technology to the teacher so that they know exactly what's happening in their classroom? Where are all the students' abilities? What tools or lessons, in this case, do I need to use tomorrow that's different because I now know what the diagnostic is in the classroom? And so how do you basically have that personalization tool that only technology can bring that really enables that teacher to succeed, and connect that from the central perspective, because we work at, you know, again, the scale of systems, so that there's still digital transparency and accountability from the ministry, from the government level, to say, yes, we have this ability to make sure that each teacher is able to deliver what they need, but we also have standardization of where we're heading to, what the outcomes are, and the accountability from that. So, you know, for us, technology is that tool that enables that super enablement of the teacher, that reduces their, you know, cognitive load, so that they can focus on delivering and care for the student, and doesn't have to have as much preparation, which can be done in a very effective way, but still have that adherence towards quality outcomes. And so that's, you know, that super enablement is where technology plays a role, and then changes in many ways that the investment thesis that you were talking about.
Andrew, I wanted to ask as well, how do you keep teachers and instructors up to date and motivated in line with the evolving needs of the industry?
Yeah. So I want to go back to the very first question you asked when we started, which was transformative or stability. And I would probably have raised my hand for the transformative. I think investing in the current structure is great, but I think there are two things which, you know, we all have to acknowledge, and that is, one, the pace of change, how quickly most professions are changing, and how you need to keep up with that. And so I think, to Jay's point, this is, you know, AI can be a super tool to help teachers, trainers, others be able to do that. They can't do it alone. They need support even in doing that, but that is a great tool to do that. The other, maybe a bit more controversial, and maybe won't have complete agreement, but the other factor is the marginal value of knowledge is approaching zero. To your point, knowledge is all here now. When most of us on this panel went to school and we graduated, what people looked for was what we knew coming out of there. That's no longer the case. It's these other skills that we've been talking about that are really going to be, I think, critical going forward. And so I think to answer the question, I think, you know, treating teachers not just as conveyors of knowledge, but enabling them to provide the skills and the training and some of these other life skills. I like to talk to our teams that we're not preparing youth for their first job. We're preparing youth for their fifth job. And that fifth job may be a couple of years away already. And so how do we give them the tools to be lifelong learners? And when I'm looking at the transformation aspect of the system, I think finding systems that enable learners to come in and out throughout their lifetime is where we need to be heading. We're no longer bestowing all of the knowledge that people need, whether it's, when they're leaving high school level or they're leaving university or graduate degree. That learning needs to continue all along. So teachers, trainers, facilitators are going to be, I think, impacting people's lives throughout their lifespan more than they have in the past.
Yeah, and I guess you talk a lot about enrollment growth with K-12, but that doesn't always translate into long-term student success or employability. From your perspective, what outcome is most overlooked in K-12 investment decisions, and why does it matter so much later on down the line?
Well, yeah, I think we've talked a lot about some of those skills. I think the result is that you end up very often with a lot of people with credentials, but not the right ones for the job market. And so making sure that that's aligned, I think that's often overlooked in curricula development. I think we do a lot of investment in infrastructure, but not necessarily in updating the curricula. I think this is one thing that's so great about Jay's model is really being able to be able to do that. So that's one, and I think the outcome is you make if you don't make the investment now, you're going to be paying for it down the line in both unemployment, lack of productivity, all kinds of costs that will hit society and the individual later on. So it's a smart investment to make. And so often the word cost is used in this. How much does it cost to educate or something? And I really balk at that term of cost. It's how much investment you're going to be making. So.
Yeah. So I have, it's been a very wide-ranging discussion, and I have a final question I'd like to ask all of you. So I'll start from Jay and go to my left. But my question is, if a new investor entered the MENA K-12 education sector tomorrow with a good amount of capital and intentions for impact, what single mistake would you most strongly warn them not to make?
I guess I would, I think I would focus on a sort of a broader investment thesis. The investment thesis for investment in private schools in the MENA region is incredible. I think the next evolution is going to be the extension of this into the rest of the system, into the public, into government systems, right? So the private schools in the MENA region serve, depending on the country, 10 to 30% of the population, meaning the vast majority of the population is being served by the government system. I think there's going to be an extension of private sector focused solutions and therefore investment opportunities that are contracted by forward-looking, ambitious governments looking to transform the whole public school sector. And as a result, I think that's going to open up, and so my advice would be not to miss this opening up, a huge investment opportunity in private sector enablement through long-term, stable government contracts with governments with big goals, big ambitions, the capital to put behind it. So it'd be to not miss that opportunity.
What about you, Fatima?
Yes. My single advice will be to any new investor that they need to really understand the market, what might work well and not work. Sometimes we come across lots of investor in education that they believe that what worked in the Western Europe can definitely be easily replicated in this part of in the GCC, which is not 100% correct. They need to really understand the culture. They need really to understand how they even localize the tools, whether it's AI, technology, to cater to the need of the, I would say, young generation in the Gulf region. At the same time, if we will talk about the outcome of the education system, what is again needed and required and in demand in the GCC will differ from what it's in demand, what is in demand in the other parts of the world. Also, trying to identify the right select a local partner and operator, for them not to assume that being alone, navigating through the investment landscape in the market would provide them with a faster success route. Definitely identifying the local partner who have the right connection, who have the right understanding of the investment landscape would provide them with the, I would say, potentially a better outcome.
I would say the quality of the labor market, the quality of the labor force and workforce is a critical piece for investment. When anyone's looking at investment in a particular country, that's one of the first things they're looking at is the talent available. And so I would say don't miss the opportunity to be very closely aligned with government investment strategies, with private sector investment strategies. Education cannot continue to be done kind of in isolation. It has to be done in the context that's there. And so to really be proactive in marrying those components.
Interesting. When it comes to me, and I've had more time to prepare than my colleagues, to be honest, but frankly speaking, I would suggest if he's coming to invest in our market, for example, and he wants to put his money behind the education sector, I would say to focus your investment towards either one of two. If you're going to the traditional education systems in schools, focus on a school that really works on building a student's personality and character. Because the education and the curriculum now, most of which is currently available online or through AI tools. But what you're missing is an actual school or a foundation that's building the student's character, building his confidence, building his self-esteem. That's on the education front. So look at the school to put your money that is looking on that, because that's where parents are running towards as well. The other side of it is that there's a lot of educational initiatives that have launched globally, such as 42, and has been doing a lot of incredible, massive campuses to teach education on AI, blockchain, computer sciences for free for students. And put your money behind those initiatives, because governments are looking at this and they're taking them and solely giving them a piece of land and a proper building for them to come and operate. So on one of those two sectors, I would say.
Thank you. So we've had a very wide-ranging and I believe a very important discussion. It's K-12 education. It sits on the intersection of many things: demographics, technology, policy, and of course the future of employment and work. The opportunities in the region are enormous, but so are the risks of getting it wrong. We know you could scale up, but without quality, that could fail. Not only technology and disruption and innovation and transformation, we need the teachers. We obviously face shortages, so we have to be able to engage with teachers and young people to keep them engaged in the world of education and want to follow through and pursue careers there to address these shortages. You need capital, but you also need patience, because these are long-term outcomes. These are impactful investments. Yeah. Not just about ROIs, but although that's a very important thing, there's a lot of other metrics that we can look at, and of course there's no benchmark which fits each country with different regulations and approach and connectivity and economies. The winners in the sector will be those who understand that education is not just an asset class, it's built on trust, culture, and long-term outcomes. But we've got a huge opportunity in MENA with the youthful population, and we can turn that into a genuine economic advantage. The question isn't how fast we grow schools, platforms, and portfolios, but how much intention we use and how deliberately we build them. That's the challenges for investors, operators, policy makers alike. And that's the conversation we've begun today. And thank you all for being here. And thanks again for the panelists. And thank you for GFH for hosting.
Thank you.